Debating Dating, a podcast with me, Rachel Graham.
And me, Marc Jennings.
We're two single friends, and every episode we'll be discussing our differing perspectives on an aspect of modern dating.
We'll be sharing our honest insights and experiences as platonic pals who are not afraid to give each other the unvarnished truth.
Or laugh at each other's bullshit. So this week we're going to be talking about dating during lockdown. And we've been kind of avoiding talking about it for a while. We wanted the podcast to be a bit of an escape where we could chat about all the different aspects of dating. But obviously it's the elephant in the room. It's the thing that's been affecting us all for a year. It's really moulded dating in general. So we thought it was about time that we had an episode all about dating during COVID.
Yeah, and I think the thing about it is obviously it's been like basically a year now since the pandemic hit and the first lockdown happened and stuff, and obviously people will be in all different types of situations and all that, and you know, we're aware that it's a long time to ask people to go about, especially if you're single, to go about, you know, sort of having some sort of contact with people, physical contact or whatever. We're aware that that's the case. Today's episode, we're going to be talking about dating, you know, within the guidelines. You know, we don't want to be promoting anything that would be breaking the rules or putting people at risk and all the rest of it. But we understand that, you know, that is a part of people's, you know, at some point might have been part of people's lives, and there's got no judgment for that, basically. But it's, you know, a serious time. We certainly don't want to be promoting any ideas of rule breaking or anything like that. But we're trying to be as honest as we can about, you know, what it's like dating at the moment, you know, during all the guidelines, when everything's going on, while you're trying to have a love life, but also being a responsible member of society and, you know, trying to get through this thing as best you can without putting people at risk and all that as well.
Exactly. And any kind of chat that we have, obviously this is a comedy podcast, but we're very well aware of how serious the situation is, how people could be affected by it. We're obviously aware of the gravity of the situation. So just kind of a bit of a disclaimer that we're aware of that, and you know, sticking to the rules like good law-abiding citizens.
Absolutely, and we have got a great guest today, as well as some fantastic submissions on the subject as well. And we'd just like to say, because this is the first episode we've actually recorded since we released the first batch. There's 5 that have come out at the time of this recording, and we'd just like to say thank you so much to everybody who's taken the time to download, to listen, and to send us some really lovely feedback. We've really been blown away by the numbers, by the amount of people messaging, and the amount of people that seem to be enjoying it and relating to it. So that does mean the world to us. So thank you very much so far, and we hope that we keep with you. We will be releasing every week going forward for the foreseeable future anyway. So please do keep listening, tell your pals and all that. But we're just really thankful for everybody listening.
Yeah, and I was also thinking, Mark, that, you know, this has really shaped the podcast, the lockdown, because we have only ever done it on Zoom to each other, and I wonder how like different it would be. It was almost like we were like, okay, what can we do creative, and what can we do to chat about this? So it's kind of like it's happened because we've been in these refined situations. You know what I mean? Absolutely.
It's going to be interesting. It'll be nice when we get to do it in person together.
It'll be so weird to see your actual living face.
Absolutely. And I think hopefully in time you can join us as well. Hopefully, if there's enough demand when everything
a
finishes,
live show.
We could do a wee live show, you know, go back to the old Stand Comedy Club or something like that, and that'd be great. So here's hoping there's a bit of future to look forward to, hopefully, once all of this clears, and we do sort of get to that throughout the podcast. But as I say, today it's all about dating during the pandemic, which, as Rachel says, is a bit the elephant in the room. So that's what we'll be chatting about today, and we hope you enjoy it. Joining us this week is our fantastic guest, Jade Birkin of Jaded Blog. How you do? Or JadedDating, I should say. JadedDating blog. How you doing, Jade?
Yeah, I'm really well, thank you. Thanks so much for having me.
No problem at all. Thanks so much for joining us. So this week we're going to be talking about dating during the pandemic, and you were saying that you were basically straight away when the pandemic hit, you had a sort of Zoom date right off the bat, is that right?
Yeah, it was a Skype date. We weren't loving Zoom. We didn't know about it the same.
That was before people knew what Zoom was.
Yeah, I'd heard about it and I was like, yeah, whatever. The very first weekend of lockdown, so I was like straight in there because we had decided that if we were going to go into lockdown, we were going to have a Skype date.
And how did you find it? Like, so at the time there was a kind of, obviously there's a sort of novelty factor in that. Like everybody was using House Party. Remember that app?
Do you know, we did have to move to House Party because Skype was kept breaking my video up. So we did end up moving to House Party. So it's really funny you say that because it's almost like a distant memory of using House Party.
I know. And I'd seen obviously, so I'd read a few of your blogs and stuff like that as well. And you'd actually went on a online, during COVID and all that, you'd went on a online speed dating night. Is that right?
Yeah, I did. Yeah. Like? So I actually am a speed dating host when we're allowed to have events and things. So
really?
A company that I know had called me and actually at first they were just asking for advice as to whether they can do Glasgow and Edinburgh, like make the two cities the one night, because they had no concept of how far away they were from each other. And I was like, yeah, that's
metaphorically.
I was like, well, I mean, I once matched with a guy in the south side of Glasgow and I'm in the West End and he said I was too far away. So it just, I was like, oh, I'm sure it'll be fine.
I agree with that.
And then they just said, actually, do you want to come along? And I was like, what, do you want me to host it? And they were like, no, as a single person, but as long as you write about it in your blog. And I was like, yeah, all right, I've got nothing else to do anyway. So.
Yeah. That's good as well, because that gives you a kind of excuse, like, oh, I'm just doing this for the blog. Like, because there used to be this comedy night that ran in Glasgow and stuff, and it was like a dating night. So it was like you would go up and do a bit of like comedy, and in between, like there'd be different tables, and people would move around the tables, and it'd be like a kind of group speed dating thing, but you'd get maybe 15 minutes or something. And so I'd done that a couple of times, but the comedians are also on the wee list that you can sort of say you've liked somebody. So it was like a good cop out where I could be like, hey, I'm just here to do comedy, but by the way, guys, I'm single as well. It was pretty good, rather than just being like, I'm here and you know, that for this exact reason. It's a good wee excuse, you know what I mean? Obviously you're used to doing them in person, so how does the online ones compare during lockdown and stuff?
I actually enjoyed it a lot more. The only thing is when you would come on and there would be like maybe a blank screen and it would just say the host is assigning someone, and then the person would come up and there would be a wee 5-minute timer, and at first it's like, oh, hi, you all right? Yeah. Whereas I think when you're in person it's a lot easier to be like, oh, you all right, have you been here before? And it just
yeah you can't cheers glasses online or something like that.
Yeah, it's just silly little things like that when you can't even see like, oh, what are you drinking, or some, you know, that kind of opener that you would use in person.
Yeah, no kind of icebreaker.
I'm really curious because I've never been to one before. I'm really curious what the guys are like there, because I remember the one that Mark was talking about, they were always very like low on men and had a lot of women, and they were like, come on, single guys, come. What was the kind of vibe? Was there a lot of kind of similar types of guys, or was it a big mix?
It was a big mix. In the company that I worked for, and now I have my own company for it, but we would only run the night if it's an equal number or maybe one or two different. And I have heard about other ones when they've been like, there was no women. And I'm like, oh, sorry, I don't know what to say, but we're not like that. And we're quite strict on age groups as well.
Oh, yeah.
Because that does actually matter to a point. But it's been really different over just the last 2 years. Before the pandemic, I was like, younger folk were coming, like younger girls and then younger guys, and it was just such a variety, and there's so many people that ended up sort of being regulars as well. That were just great fun. And there's definitely there's not just the finding the person you're going to marry aspect to it, because people at the end of the night, they'd be like, Jade, so after the speed dating I would get everyone to sit together and just have a drink as a group, and sometimes a woman would be speaking to another woman or whatever. And at the end of the night, some people say to me, I didn't even meet someone, but I had a great night. And I was like, it's just, as a single person, it's so important to just have a night away from the sofa and swiping and just come out and talk to people who are in the same position as you. So it is always an uplifting, confidence boost thing for singles to do.
Yeah, it's energizing, isn't it? Like that's what I've been finding with COVID and the lockdown, is that kind of thing of like, even just when you meet someone that you've not met before, because obviously right now we're just like, oh, I'll meet my friend for a walk who I know and all that kind of stuff. You're never meeting new people, and then as soon as you get the opportunity to meet someone new, it makes you feel quite like, oh my god, this is kind of what real life was like a little kind of taster of it. So yeah.
And I think
good.
especially if you're single and all your friends are in relationships and you don't have that person to talk to, and how many times do people feel like they're the last single person, and then you come to this event and there's 30 to 40 other single people in your age group. You're just like, okay, I'm not the last single person, it's okay, let's just go and have a chat.
Totally. That's what like me and Mark were always like, was at least we had each other, and like you get invited to like a wedding and then we'd be like, right, good, are we sitting next to each other? We don't want to be like put in the like the singles table.
No.
Although we did get separated for everybody at our next wedding, and we was just me and you getting all like, how are we not up with our pals here? What's going on?
We were pure demoted.
I know, it's always like the other two single people and the kids. That's where you get parked when you're single at a wedding.
Yeah.
So obviously, so as I say, this week's episode, we're talking about dating during the pandemic. It has been going on for a lot longer than we all probably thought. Back when you were having that first Skype date, Jade, you probably never thought that, nearly a year down the line, that'd still be the best option for a Friday night date or something like that.
No.
But it has been a long time, and there's actually people who have kind of been, in a relationship. I've been seeing somebody that whole time and have had to deal with that's the whole relationship has just been during the pandemic. And this first clip that we've got here is an example of just that. So I'll just get this up now.
I had a slightly strange experience of dating through lockdown. I met a girl online last year via a social media site, and we had agreed to meet up in April, but as the pandemic was getting scarier, she decided to spontaneously change her flights because she lives in the south of England, and she flew up and we met in Glasgow on the Friday evening, and then when she went home on the Monday, Boris announced lockdown, and now we are 11 months in, so the first year of a relationship, because it's just kept going, but I've only met her about 6 times. So there's a really weird dynamic because we're so far apart and neither of us are in single households, we're just not allowed to meet and we're not allowed to travel or anything. So the whole year has just been virtual, but we're in a strange position where we are so close now because we've been chatting so often, but we've never even done like the simplest thing, like properly gone for dinner or, just gone on holiday or going out with friends like at all. So it's really strange to be 1 year in and for all of this still to actually happen.
I think it's so funny how much we rely on, like physical touch and being in an actual room with someone. Like, it must be so weird for it to be virtual.
I'm literally in shock. It's like wartime.
I know. I'm listening to that, like, so jealous.
It's weird. It is like wartime, though, like you say, like, because, like, I went on a socially distanced date a wee while ago, and it was like, it felt like we were courting in the 1930s or something, but, like, I suppose, like, back then, it was frowned upon to kind of get too close to somebody that you just met cause of religion, wasn't it? Whereas now it's weirdly cause of science. But some guys will be saying the same thing to their dates now as they did back then, just like, come on, you don't actually believe in any of that shit, do you?
I think it's funny as well, like, we really romanticize, like, I don't know about you, Jade, but I'm very much like, I wish that I had been in the courting days, like how nice it would have been, all the kind of Jane Austen stuff and, like wartime and stuff. But when it's actually the reality, it's not fun because, you want to touch people, and it is so it's so alien to be like I actually had a really funny thing. Well, it wasn't funny at the time, but I had a thing where I'd gone on like a socially distanced walk and with this guy, and this was when the restrictions were less, and then a week later the restrictions got really tight again. And he was like, "Oh, do you want to go on a second date?" And I was like, "Yeah, but obviously, we won't be able to kiss. Do you think you can handle that?" Trying to be all flirty, like, "Do you think you could handle not kissing me for however long?" And he was like, "Oh, yeah, maybe we should just leave it then." And I was like, "Oh, okay, so obviously."
Well, depends how far you went on. Depends how far you went on the first date, I suppose.
No, but we didn't go far at all. Thank you very much. But yeah, I just thought it was like that thing of being like, "Yeah, we can't kiss. Okay, bye. See you never."
Yeah, I went on a socially distanced date in the summer, and we went for a walk. And at first, it started all right, and we actually knew someone in common who's a good friend of mine. And quite early on, though, just the way he was talking, he was just such a lad's lad, and nah. So at the end of the day, I was like, thank God, he's not allowed to hug me and lean in. That would be really awkward.
The thing I think is interesting about it is because, like you say, it's like there's no kind of icebreaker of like, usually if you meet somebody in a bar or whatever, it's like you're having a wee drink, so there's alcohol there to kind of, you know, just make things a bit like less awkward in terms of the conversation.
Looser.
You know, there's music, there's other people, there's things going on. But when it's, and then obviously is, but even the sort of thing with kissing and stuff like that, a lot of time that sort of stuff, you know, you can cover up for the fact that maybe he's on the pure, you know, getting on like a house on fire, but he's are maybe both just, you know, wanting a wee kiss or whatever. But the social distance dates, all of that artifice is stripped away, and it is literally just you and someone else during the day walking about a park a couple of meters apart. And it's like, you know, it really needs to go well, I think, for you to want to maybe see that person again or to keep it going. And then there's also this weird thing of there being a sort of, you know, there's a bit of a bottleneck in terms of where it can go, because it's like, you know, after a couple of dates, it's then, well, we either just keep doing this forever or, you know, we move in.
I know, yeah.
I think the socially distanced date thing is it's really stacked against you. Do you know what I mean? Like, it's that thing of, like you're saying, like no alcohol. I also think it's really hard to look sexy in a coat. Do you know what I mean? You know, when you're getting ready for the date, I'm like, well, I don't have any of my, like, normally I'll maybe wear a bit of a low cut top or something. And I was just like, well, I'm just gonna have to wear a fucking scarf, aren't I?
Well, you say that, but our sponsors this week, Bergos, say otherwise. Try out the new Merapeaks. They're back for 2021, and you can look sexy on your social distance date. Try Merapeak. Use the code DebatingDating for a 20% discount off Merapeaks.
Yes, Mark, okay.
Other jackets are available, I should say.
They are.
Don't actually.
But also it's been so cold. Like, it's been really, really tricky. Like, I went on a date. It was a very random date. It was someone that kind of like someone, you know, when you know through them, like you were saying. Yeah, it was a friend's wee brother. But anyway, and it was really cold. And it was like, honestly, it was like -2. And it was like so cold. And I was just thinking, like, how can you even kind of like, how can you make this work for longer than humanly possible? It's like that Titanic moment of being like, I'm so cold.
I know. I always
bit
like
over dramatic.
Over dramatic, me? What are you talking about? Little old me?
Yeah, when I had my socially distanced walk, the weather had been a bit rubbish. We had rescheduled a couple of times that week. So I had like my leggings and my trainers and the kind of all nice-ish top on. But I had my wee pack-a-mac in my bag, and then it did end up raining, and I had to like pull my wee pack-a-mac out and tie my hair up, and it started getting really heavy. And he's like, oh, let's go and stand under the trees. And I was like, I hate this. I couldn't be more like, let's just get me back home. It just maybe depends, because standing under the trees in the rain could have been really romantic if it was my Prince Charming, but
yeah, so
I hated it.
I think the romantic thing as well is, like, in terms of sometimes a date can be too romantic, and because you're not feeling into it, it makes it even worse. Like, I've been on one where we were chatting about like how beautiful it was, and there was like I was literally just randomly saying that I'd never seen, I think I was saying that I used to think that shooting stars didn't exist because I hadn't seen one until I was like 20. And then we were like sitting looking over Glasgow, and it was pure twinkling lights and like fog and all that. We saw a shooting star, but because neither of us were like really that into it, it was just like, oh no, this added pressure, romantic pressure when it doesn't exist, you know?
It's like if you're on a date and you've seen these American things, not like an American baseball game, and it puts you on the jumbo screen and gets you
the kiss cam. It's like, kiss. No, we're not meant to.
That would be my greatest fear if I lived in America and I was on a date. I ended up on kiss cam.
But kissing
go and see the Yankees or something on a first date, basically.
But kissing is such a thing, isn't it? Like, so me and my old flatmate used to chat. I want to know your opinion on, you know, like the moments before a kiss. So like, I think that's the best bit of a date, and obviously we can't have that right now. And you don't get the confirmation as well of like if you want them to like you, if they kiss you, you're like, okay, well they're into it. But do you enjoy that anticipation? Because my flatmate said it was the worst part of the date. Like she found it really embarrassing. How do you feel about the moment?
I think maybe that's depending on how your date has gone and how you feel about that person, maybe. Because this guy that I was seeing for quite a wee while, we had our first date in the summer when it was like eat out to help out and whatever, and we went a wee walk around Kelvin Grove, and it was
nice.
just like getting closer. I could just feel us getting closer, and I was so excited. And then it's also been so long since I'd had a wench. I was like, yay! So everybody will be buzzing by the time we're allowed to.
Oh my god, it's going to be pandemonium. Everyone's going to be like, it's going to be like the Roaring 20s.
I'll still be wearing my mask while I do it, honestly.
But like if you're into it, I do think it's really fun, and I do think it's what we're missing right now is that we're all having to be very prudish, and you know, we're not designed to be unsexual beings, you know.
Well, because I think you're saying on that day, Rachel, as well. You were at you're saying because obviously you weren't. I think you said you weren't sure whether your date wanted to kiss you. Yeah. And so there's just the usual thing of that, like, you know, not really knowing whether to go for the kiss, especially as a guy. I think the guy's probably thinking, oh, I don't know whether to go for the kiss or not. And then if you're on a date during all this as well, there's like that thing of like, well, I know I shouldn't, first of all. And then if, you know, we both were going to do that, you know, does she want to still? Do you know what I mean? So there's like an added level of like, I'm not quite sure if this is cool or not.
I suppose it's good to kind of really hammer home the whole consent thing, isn't it? You know, like it's like people maybe we'll come out of this pandemic and people will be a bit more aware of not just going for it if they're not getting the right cues.
You should get that letter that they send to key workers if they get stopped by the police. Like, I'm a key worker, I'm allowed to winch people in the park.
It's the kiss of life. Resuscitation.
So, play this next clip now that we received on dating and during the pandemic.
For me, the worst part of virtually dating is the fact that you cannot meet the other person soon enough. And most of the time, like not just me, but also other people that I know, the conversation turns into sexting and there's no going back from there. It either goes towards like, okay, I don't care about a pandemic, we meet each other, not my case. The other case is you go into a conversation, it becomes like a civil conversation, and if there's no spark there, you don't continue the conversation. And it's a shame, because if we were allowed to meet each other, it would have been much easier to say like, okay, I see you, not my type. But in this case, is all very difficult. And that's, for me, is the worst part. It's very healthy. Like, what can you do during a pandemic? It's healthy for the mind and for the body, waiting for the body to be healthy.
I agree. I think the sexting thing is very interesting because obviously I think the issue with this whole thing is that you don't want it to become a sexual thing because that can't happen, but at the same time you don't want it to be the most boring chat. You don't want there to be that kind of undercurrent, and when it's very straight-laced, and we're not designed to not be having it, and I 100%, I'm like, I'm sticking to the rules and I'm dealing with it and all that kind of stuff. It's almost like it's healthier to sext to like hold rather than hold it in, you know.
It's one of these things as well is I'm all about spark and that connection that you can only get in person. And if you're talking to someone on FaceTime or whatever and you're really, really liking them, you're like, well, they're very attractive, but you don't know if there's that spark. So you sort of want to sext a little bit to see if you're on the same wavelength.
Yeah.
And not become friends. But there's also the risk that then when you do meet in person, you might not have that spark. And that's just unfortunately something that we're going to have to see.
And the risk is as well, and I'm very aware of it because I think that it's happened a few times to me where something has led down into the sexting route and then they don't see you as, and this is what's really annoys me, is they don't see you as someone that they want to meet and date and potentially turn into a relationship, because they have like reframed you in their mind as someone who is basically just like a pen pal, is basically just someone that they can use to sext. And I think that's the danger, is like, you never really know how they're gonna view you when you do that. And hopefully you want them to be still respectful, but I think actually an issue is that some people go, oh well, she's sexting me, so she's not as worth it, which is obviously bullshit.
Yeah, that's the thing. Are you sexting because you're just looking to pass the time and for like get some fantasies in your head to kill time, or are you looking for that connection with someone? And you can't really ask that, can you? Maybe you could, I don't know, I wouldn't, but yeah, it's a difficult time, and fair enough either way. If you do just want, you know, a bit of sexting to fulfill your fantasy as much as you can and kill some time, then do it. But I think there needs to be a level of letting the other person know what your intentions are with talking to them.
100%.
I think it's actually a vital service at this time. I mean, it's been it's been a year, right?
Of course you would.
And there's the man's point of view.
Well, these emotions, your built up sexual drive has got to come out some way, right? And look, if we're all sticking to the rules, we're all trying to get the virus down, all the rest of it, then do you know what? See a wee bit of sexy texting or whatever, however far you want to take it.
Little grandpa over here.
Whatever, all right, because I've no mashed the two words together. But a wee bit of sexting, right? That might be the difference between people who will just, use that and get their rocks off with that.
Get their rocks off.
Whatever, right? That might be the difference. A wee bit of sexting that, satisfies the person's desires for that evening or whatever might be the difference between them deciding to do that, stay in the house and stop the spread of the virus, or deciding to fucking break the rules and meet up with somebody. And like, I actually did it, like, because I did put a wee comedy video a while ago, and it was like it was like a fake, it was like one of the fake Scottish government adverts, and it was like as if they were telling people to send more nudes to stop people meeting up in person.
With the recent tightening of lockdown restrictions, the Scottish Government is appealing to all single people currently using dating apps to resist the urge to break the rules and meet up with matches for sexual activities. With these new measures in place, we know it and you will be harder than ever. That's why the Scottish Government is urging single people to do everything they can to send more nudes to potential partners to limit the desire to get together in person. Sending your nude could potentially make the difference between a Tinder match coming to your place and increasing the spread of the corona and other types of virus, or just letting them have a wank over your Snapchat photo before falling asleep. The message to single people is simple. Stay at home, send nudes, save lives.
To be honest, I probably made it look a bit too convincing. Some people didn't think it was real, right?
Fake news.
The reason, because I was just thinking about it, and I was like, well, that actually does make sense, because you're better to, send a nude, or, with all consent sort of going by, or, just doing a bit of sexting, because that is an innocent thing. If that helps people get, their desires out, their sexual, tension out, then that's a way to do it without, giving into your sort of desire and going, screw it, I'm just going to break the rules and meet people, which obviously people are doing, and it's obviously better if they don't. So it's a ridiculous conclusion, but it would actually technically help if,
No, I totally agree. And if you need to do it, then do it. And there's somebody in my life that I've known for 10, 11 years, and we sometimes randomly go for a drink and stuff sometimes happens. So at the moment, and he works away, and he's actually like in lockdown in Africa, but we have a bit of we play Scrabble going, and then we have a wee text and a wee flirt, but then I'm still obviously on Hinge looking for the love of my life. So balance.
This is amazing, because I feel like you are me, because I love a flirt on Scrabble Go, and I have a similar person, and it's so funny. I was just like, is this me? It's so true. I think as long as it's not hurting anybody, and as long as everyone involved has communicated, it's great to have. I think as well, like my person has always been that wee bit further away as well. So it's that kind of thing of being like, oh, well, you know, it's not meant to be, and it's not, but we can still enjoy the excitement of that. My worry is, though, that sometimes if you spend too much time doing that, then it might distract you from looking for the whole Mr. Right thing.
Yeah, especially if they're really good at sexting, and then you maybe meet someone who's a potential and he's not good at sexting, you're like,
totally. See when someone's got that little writer in them, I'm like, oh, impressive.
Yeah, me too. Like, as a writer, I need that as well.
You kind of just need to get through this the best way you can, though, because it's like either you see, be honest, like there's people that I talk to, like, you know, I've matched on Tinder or whatever, like in recent times, and it's like it is just more of a kind of pen pal, like, would you get up to, not, because again there's that thing of like, well, normally by this point in, you know, the conversation, one of us would go, do you want to go on a date? But it's like, you can't really, I mean, unless I'm wanting to cross the border into Glasgow City Council, and then, you know, I'm not meant to even be doing that. So it's like you're kind of going, well, it's probably just not going to it's going to happen now, and it, you know, it just sort of peters out, because, you know, again, that's kind of where we're at now. So I think whether you're doing that, whether you're sexing somebody, whatever, I think we've all just kind of got to get through this as best we can. And if you meet the love of your life during this, great. Or if you just, you know, have people to just kind of, you know, talk to you on a night when you're in the house and, you know, you're not really having a lot of interactions with people, then that's fine as well.
It's the same as what I said about speed dating, both in person and virtually. It's just about having a conversation with someone who's in the same boat as you, and that can be such a good support. So that's why I suggest, if you are single, go on Tinder or whatever, just to have a conversation, and maybe then you're going to talk about something that's not COVID, you know.
Absolutely.
So
yeah, I know
it's very important for mental health as well, to just go and talk to people who are also single right now.
100%.
There's nothing worse than when you're like Zooming people and it always comes around to COVID, which is why we have kind of avoided doing this podcast until now. But we just kind of were like, you know what? It is like the elephant in the room that we do need to chat about it.
It'd be weird if we just never mentioned it. Pandemic?
Pandemic?
What?
Never heard of it.
Like we've just been carrying on this whole time as normal.
I'm going on loads of speed dating now, so you're not coming.
But that was apparently there was a doctor on The Last Leg a while ago, and they were saying like after the 1918 Spanish flu or whatever, there was like a massive rise in like VD or whatever, and like that's probably going to happen again.
Well, funnily enough, the guy that I was talking about, who I occasionally have a little chat with, is in New Zealand. So, and he actually works as an STI, STD, like he educates children and teenagers.
See, I think that would be more awkward to break to somebody than the fact you've got a dating blog, personally.
But it is that thing that he was saying, that like New Zealand was having an all-time high of syphilis, and I was like, oh my god, syphilis! Like you think that's like Tudor times, and then I looked up and Scotland had it as well, and I was like, oh, that's a shame for New Zealand. Oh no, Scotland also is experiencing high levels of this.
It's not just the socially distant states that feel like they're for the past; it's the fucking venereal diseases people are catching as well.
I know someone who works in a pharmacy, and the very first weekend when the bars opened again, whenever that was last year, I've forgotten now, it seems like forever ago, that weekend they ran out of the morning after pill at the pharmacy.
Oh god, that's awful.
Hey, it's one thing if the toilet roll's not on the shelves, but if you can't get that morning after pill, that's when you know the pandemic's got bad.
Oh my god, I do think it will be very, like, people are going to be really hedonistic and want to seek out pleasure because we've not had anything, and we're, you know, it's been a long time. Have I said that on this podcast?
There is a guy out there that I've connected with through another contact in the dating industry this year, and he was back maybe a year or 2 years ago, maybe. I think it was Cosmopolitan did the 20 most swiped singles in the UK, and he was on that, and he was pretty much a standard good-looking guy. Yeah, and he'd also mentioned that he had on his profile, "I've never seen The Lion King." So he was constantly getting messages about that. And he was asked to go on Love Island. He's like, nah, I don't want to do that. I'm going to go around Australia with my mates. But when he was in Australia, he was running out of money. But people were still messaging him, asking for advice. So he has set up a business called Dater Help, and he basically redoes profiles.
Oh, I do think that's useful, because I think like it is tricky to know how to get yourself across in like however many characters and all that as well.
Yeah, but it's funny because as soon as I had read that he had done this, I've never seen Lion King. I have seen so many guys write that on their profile, and you'll probably spot it now. It's either the Lion King or Harry Potter.
I've got
So
Star
that we'll be
Wars in mine
outraged.
actually. I've got Star Wars. I've never seen Star Wars, and I've got because Hinge used to only have certain questions. Like I've never done this, and I was like, I've never seen Star Wars. And people do say shit to me like that about that all the time. It's a good conversation starter. That's what I'm going to say.
Yeah.
I didn't realise that was basically stealing that guy's stuff though. But I'm certainly nowhere near the top 20 swiped guys. I'll tell you that much. I don't know if you've seen this on Tinder recently, but no, sometimes you swipe somebody on Tinder and then it comes up, would you like to change this to a super like? Because
yes,
you've got no chance with this person unless
stand out.
There's no way that you're even going to come up on this person's thing unless you pay £3.99 a month to Tinder or whatever. Like.
But they've got that on Hinge as well with the rose. You can like give a rose, which is basically like a super like. And I got a rose the other day, and I just thought, a rose is just the wrong thing. Like it just immediately it makes my skin crawl, and I can't really put my finger on why, but I'm just like, oh, too much.
I didn't know that that's what that was, but I've just been on Hinge again the last couple of weeks, and I've had a couple of rosies, and I was like, what's with all the rosies? And I was like, some guy has told single guys to send a rose, and that's the wrong message.
I got a rose, and then this person said, "Oh, sorry, didn't mean to send a rose."
That's a lie, though. It's like, oh no, I didn't mean to super like you, but hi anyway. It's like, okay.
This next submission we've got is somebody who is still working during the pandemic and managed to get into a kind of relationship, but probably one that didn't go too well, I suppose.
Yeah, because they work with them. So is there like such a thing as a work bubble?
I don't know. In a way, though, it does make sense.
It is. I think
like,
there is.
I think there is, yeah.
Which is very handy.
I know. That's
but not good for the self-employed.
No.
Not good for our workplace.
Alone again.
Hi guys, firstly just wanted to say really loving the podcast. Basically, I made an error of judgment during lockdown trying to date. I'm a key worker, so I've been going into work as normal. This new guy had started pretty much just as lockdown set in. It got quite flirty, just kind of developed like that, and then pubs were doing takeaway pints, so he'd suggested doing that after work one day, and we got really hammered and kind of was like, is this a date? Kind of went from there, but it got really intense really quickly. Seeing the guy every day in work, and in work was constantly just trying to chat or like in the corridor saying cutesy stuff or always wanting to go walks during break. We would always come to mine. It was like never away. We even ended up going on like a 2-day mini break when that was allowed. He told me he loved me really early on as well, which is a bit of an alarm bell, and it just felt so intense. But then sort of like final nail in the coffin was when my birthday rocked up. So I really hate PDAs. I just find them really cringy and awkward. So my birthday came up and he got this cake specially made of this show I like, brought it into the office, blaring the theme song from it, made everyone sing,
Sweet.
had party hats on, and from that point on I just had the ick. Anything he did was annoying. I just felt he was a bit clingy. His patter was annoying. The way he breathed, I couldn't be near him. I wouldn't recommend dating anybody in work at all, generally, but especially not during lockdown. I think because it was like all we could focus on, it turned into this little relationship microcosm. Like it felt like years worth of the ups and downs of dating in the space of like 3-4 months. And yeah, safe to say now it's really awkward, like really frosty. Anytime we pass each other, basically don't shit where you eat.
Amen.
Oh dear.
I mean, so relatable of just having that moment of the ick and just being like, oh no, it's fucked now.
Yeah, there's such a pressure right now because you have to go, you know what, it's something I've just experienced, going, right, okay, so are we exclusive? We have to be exclusive so we can officially bubble up and cross a council line to see each other. And it just all the pressure. And I was like, I hate that the only person I can see is him. Like, go away. Like, Go away.
It's such a big commitment as well, right? Because I was in a relationship at the beginning of lockdown, and we broke up towards the end of last year. But it's hard ending that relationship during all this, because like your choice isn't between staying in the relationship or becoming single. Your choice is between staying in the relationship or becoming fucking celibate. Like,
yeah.
It's like, you might as well be leaving them to go and become a monk. Do you know what I mean? Just like, I've always wanted to learn how to make wine here. Come on.
I definitely kept it going for longer than I probably would have in the real world because of that. And yeah.
But it's I think it's awkward as well, like that guy saying it was somebody in his work, right? Because like there is nothing worse, I think, like, because we spoke about this in another podcast, but it was like, the thing about getting with somebody in your work is it's kind of like we were saying earlier on about what it's like texting somebody now. It's either like it's not going to, nothing's ever going to come of it. It's like once and then it's done, or it's like you get in a relationship, but it's kind of no going back once you get to that stage. Because I remember like I used to work with this girl and we went out for a while and then we split up, and I was still into her and she wasn't into me, and like talking about that thing, like seeing them in the corridors and all that. And I'd always like, we actually worked in kind of different departments, so we wouldn't bump into each other that much, but then sometimes I'd see her in the corridor and I'd be like, oh my god, this must be fate, you know, this is it, we're going to get back together. And she's probably looking at me going like, oh, for God's sake, I was trying to avoid him all day or whatever. And it turns out it's no fate, it's just the fact we had like, you know, similar lunch breaks or whatever. But like it is an awkward thing, and like I guess especially the now where it's like, you know, they've obviously just kind of, they've maybe been in their work bubble, end up hooking up, and it's no worked, and then he still needs to see him all the time.
I think the don't shit where you eat thing is so true. And actually, I remember day one of drama school, they sat us down and like where they were just chatting to us about kind of like the do's and don'ts when we like graduate and become actors. And they were like, the two things you need to do is, one, don't hook up with anyone in your class and don't hook up with any other actors. And number two, don't take coke. So they were like, they're the two things that will mess up your career, basically. And it's so true. And I don't take coke, but I definitely have really made a lot of interactions very awkward with actors and comedians. So I have learnt my lesson.
I was going to say, Rachel broke both of those rules on the first night.
Sorry? Yeah. No.
Snort coke off. No.
We both our brains went there. No, but honestly, it is important. It's so awkward when it like gets in the way of like career opportunities in particular, but even just in work, like it's so awkward. It really is. Is it worth it? Probably not.
He was saying as well, like it was a kind of, they felt like they had a microcosm of a longer relationship because of lockdown. Because again, similar to the social distance dates, it's like, again, if you're with someone and you're sitting about, all there is to do is like sit about the flat or whatever and, you know, watch Netflix. There's nothing that would, you know, there's no activities you can do. You can't go to the cinema, you can't go out and do stuff, you can't go out for meals and all that. Like that would normally, you know, it would sort of act as a buffer between you and the other person in terms of like, you know, even if these aren't maybe totally right for each other or not getting on or whatever, you could last a lot longer while there's other stuff to do to kind of distract you from that. But when it's just you and the person sitting in the flat, you know, there's only so much Netflix you can watch before you kind of go, you know, either this is working or it isn't. So I think that's very true. And I bet you a lot of people have felt that during COVID, this sort of thing of like feeling like they've had this really, they feel like that it's like a married, you know, they've been married and divorced during the course of like 4 months, like he was saying.
No, you're so right. And it was the same for the guy that I was with there. Cause when we first met, it was in the cinema, in the summer. So bars were open, we could go for walks, and cinemas were open as well when they were playing the older movies, and it was super fun. And then it got into the winter and all the lockdown happens again. And all we were doing was sitting in my flat. I was getting takeaways. And I said, this is a time when we should be meeting each other's parents, going out with like in our friends group and just that kind. So it was a bit of a standstill. It was a bit like, oh, now what?
I think the tricky thing is like it's really hard not to come across as too intense or jealous when actually it's it's our safety and it's our health, and no one wants to get COVID. No one wants to carry COVID and give it to someone else, be asymptomatic, all that kind of stuff. Obviously, we've all got people that we know, we're all vulnerable to it and to different degrees. And I think like when I went on a date with someone, and socially distanced, but you're still standing like relatively close. You're not standing the 2 meters, you might be a wee bit closer than that. Then I saw him on Instagram like in someone else's house, and it looked kind of slightly party vibes, and I was like, well, that's annoying for lots of reasons. Like, it's annoying that people are having parties when they shouldn't, but also I was like, that then means that I shouldn't have trusted you. But I didn't feel like I needed to be like, by the way, just so you know, please don't go to parties. Do you know what I mean? And also then you're like, you don't have claim over someone else just because you went on one date with them.
It's such an awkward conversation to have with the way things are with dating now. Like, are we seeing each other? Are we exclusive? Like, what's the tear? What's the rules? And it's really awkward right now, is before the pandemic anyway, never mind.
It's so I hate the term seeing, because I think it just it's never clear. There's never communication around it, and then you have to like have that conversation. It's just so awkward and makes you look a bit intense, I think.
This is the one time though during all of this that you can actually be judgmental about somebody who you are seeing for sleeping with someone else. You're like, you've been sleeping with someone else? Well, get away from me then. For at least self-isolate for 2 weeks and then we'll talk.
Can't believe you did that to me.
You obviously don't care if I get COVID, so fine.
Exactly. You can't care about me at all. You could have given me the virus.
And you have to really like overanalyze all the kind of like timings in between. Like I went on a date with someone, and then I went on a date with someone else a week later, and then I felt like, oh my God, is that wrong? Should I have waited the 2 weeks? Like all this kind of stuff. Like you have to be so careful. And then there's the whole Zoom dates and the phone dates. I actually was meant to have a phone date on Saturday, just there, so like a couple of days ago. And then he said that he was feeling unwell. And I was like, I sense that this is not true. If someone's like, I'm not feeling that, I feel like you could get through a phone call. Do you know what I mean? I had like my spidey senses were up. What were you going to say, Mark?
I was going to say, well, that raises an interesting thing of like, because obviously with the virus and all that, and it's a bit of a bigger deal to go and meet somebody anyway, even if it's just, a social distance walk or whatever. But do you think it's gives more of an excuse? Is it more excusable to cancel on somebody or to get cancelled on during all this because, maybe if somebody has a wee bit of a cough, they think, oh, maybe I should stay in the house.
Oh yeah, maybe it's COVID. I know, but this was a phone call, Mark. This was a phone call. So I do think it's helpful in the way that it's very.
No, I mean you clearly got patched. I'm not denying that for a second, but
I didn't actually get really patched, Mark. No, so I do think when it's the kind of socially distanced thing, it's easier to come out of it. But at the same time, if you're like, hey, are you free on Thursday? You're not going to be like, I'm really busy actually, like there's nothing, we're all not doing anything. There's no excuse. But basically this guy was like, oh, I don't feel well. And then I was like, okay, cool. And then a couple of days later, he was like, oh, I really like you. I really like you. I just think you should know that, I'm just a bit wobbly at the moment because I am 4 months out of a 7-year relationship. And I was like, no. And then he said to me, because I was thinking, well, and he was going, sorry, I just feel he was like, I would really, really like to meet you in different circumstances. But I just feel a bit funny. Like I feel different about dating day to day. And fair enough, like 7 years is a long time. And, he probably thought he was going to, marry and settle down with this person. Like I do get that. But basically I said to him, I was like, okay, well, that's good to know. What do you want then from this? Because, I need to think about, I mean, I didn't say this, but I was like, I need to think about myself. Like, I'm not just going to sit and waste my time with someone who is like still heartbroken, And he basically was like, oh, well, I'd be really happy with like continuing to text. I just feel like the phone call felt like a date. And I was like, okay, well, I kind of feel like it's like that Bridget Jones line, the bit in Bridget Jones, right? Where Daniel Cleaver is like, Jones, me and you deserve to be together, blah, 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 blah. And then she goes like, it's not a good enough deal for me. And I was kind of a bit like that. Like, I'm not going to sit and wait till you feel less heartbroken. And so I just said to him, like, listen, maybe we should just like not talk for a while, and maybe indefinitely, maybe for a couple of months, but I don't really want to like be the person to kind of like, you can kind of test your emotions on. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, especially right now, if you're not in the same place. And if he ended that 7-year relationship well in the pandemic, he just has no idea like who he is or what he wants probably right now, and he does need to go and work on himself, and you clearly need someone who knows who they are and what they want, and that's okay.
Exactly. Yeah, and you know what? It was very amicable, and I felt very proud of myself that I had that conversation, and that I kind of was like, this is my worth and I believe this. But I also think that it was good that he wasn't an arsehole, that actually I feel like there's lots of bad behaviour, but actually he communicated, he was honest, and, you know, it was a timing issue. So it actually felt quite nice. I was like, what is this feeling?
I mean, that's the thing. It wasn't about you. It was about him. It's like a cliched line, but it's true.
But I believe it.
No, but it is. You know what I mean? I've kind of felt that way a wee bit. I mean, it honestly is weird. Becoming single in the middle of this weird time. So like, it was, you know, so we were like 5-6 months into all this, and then all of a sudden I'm like, you know, what do I do? And I'm like, you know, you re-download the apps. It's like, I didn't know what the point is in having Tinder. It's like, you wouldn't go on Uber Eats if you're on fucking hunger strike, would you? Like, it's like, you know, it all looks so tempting, but, you know, I've really got to do my bit for the cause here. You know, I don't understand why I'm even on it.
I'm definitely using Just Eat and Uber Eats more than Tinder and Hinge right now, that's for sure.
I know, it's only yourself you're putting at risk by that, though, isn't it? That's
all right.
But it's an awkward one, you know. It's such an odd time because it's hard to know what the future's going to hold in general. So it's hard to sort of try and start something new. And if something's ended, then it's like, you know, it can be a bit disorientating. Like, where the hell do I go for here? You know, so it's you know, it's a tough time for people, you know, in every respect, and it's obviously, you know, we're all kind of doing our bit for the greater good now, because there's a virus out there that's, you know, it's a lot of people are dying, or you know, it's a serious thing, but at the same time, it's like, you know, the effect that it does have on people's sort of love lives or whatever is you know, is no small thing either. So the last thing I want to mention through the previous voice note was that guy was saying that once he kind of got a bit put off the guy, he was seeing he started hating the way he was breathing and the way he was eating and all that sort of stuff. And I don't know if you've ever been in a relationship where like the person gets annoyed at the wee things about you. I think it kind of happens probably in a lot of ones. I actually learned there is a term for this. I don't think it's recognised medically as a term at the moment, but basically, it was on This Morning today, right? That's how I found out about it. And Eamon Holmes and Ruth
accurate.
Occasionally do come through, right? And and so they had some guy on, and he was talking about misophonia, which is a disorder in which certain sounds trigger emotional or psychological responses that some might perceive as unreasonable given the circumstance. Now, that would explain a lot about a previous relationship I've been in. I'll just say that. It says those who have misophonia might describe it as when a sound drives you crazy. Their relationships can range from anger and annoyance to panic and the need to flee. Like, I think sometimes it's that thing, like, I've had to accept in previous relationships that, you know, I might just do stuff that is annoying, but there's also a thing of like, I could see that was you know, maybe that could have been let slide a wee bit, you know.
What are you talking about, Mark? I don't know what you're referring to. Is it chewing, maybe?
Apparently, I eat a bit noisy, and it was brought to my attention that I slurped my coffee, and after a heated debate about that, I will never slurp my coffee again.
I don't believe that for a second. Jade, you were nodding your head. Did you find that in your previous one of just finding the little things so annoying?
Not in my, but that's just what I'm like as a person. I've read about that before, that misophonia or whatever before, and I was like, that's what I have. And I can be, you know, when we're not in the pandemic, at a cafe and someone in the table next to me, it might be their tone of voice or a clattering noise that they're making, and I can really hear it in my head. Like, I've got quite good hearing, I think, and I'm like, I can't. And folks are like, Jade, just block it out. And I'm like, I can literally hear it in my head. And it's just, I loathe that person. I think it'll be like if looks could kill, and I will give him all the glares. And it's a shame. But I really feel it.
So our last clip today is from someone who did have something kind of start during lockdown, and it has ended up, I suppose, having a kind of an effect on their life that is going to last. You know, it's, as I say, it's hard sometimes to know where the future's going to go. Well, they certainly have had this next clip. They've had something that has affected their life in quite a significant way.
So I live in Canada, and I started to talk to somebody at the beginning of our original lockdown last March. We were both off of work, and we had really small social circles since we weren't working and we weren't doing anything. So we talked for a little bit, and then we decided to meet up, and we ended up becoming inseparable for like a couple months. We had nothing else to do. We weren't working. And then spent a lot of time together throughout the summer and the fall. And then things got a little bit rocky because we had to go back to work. And with distance and COVID rules, things were iffy. But almost a year later, and I'm now pregnant and expecting in July. A little bit of a whoops, but it is what it is. And it literally is the definition of a COVID baby.
That's amazing. Can you imagine if that happened to you?
Yeah, that's not what I would want, but I think it's also really, really lovely, really lovely that they've had that, and they've got something really positive, you know, if that's what they want, and that's something really, really positive to look for. And also for the people who are out there and are really looking for that, and you know, there's girls out there who feel like their clock's ticking, so it could happen, it could still happen.
I know, and that's the thing, is like, that is such a I love the way that she's so relaxed. She's just like, it was a bit of a whoops moment, but you know what? Like, we're really happy, and it's really nice. Like, I do think that
I want to hear the guy's side of that.
I spoke to her about it because this is someone that I have met, and I was speaking to her about it, and I was like, "Are you still together?" And she's like, "Yeah, we're still together." Obviously, there was a lot of shock on both parts, both ends, but still, like, it is like, it's nice. And you know, we can't plan. We can't plan with COVID at all. We don't know when things are going to change. We thought we were going to get like 5 days at Christmas to see people. We didn't. You know, I actually think it's better to not pre-plan and then just kind of be like, you know what, my life is going to be taken in whatever direction it needs to be taken.
Well, clearly they thought it was better not to pre-plan as well. But I think it's interesting how they call that a COVID baby and stuff like that. And it's quite a nice thing, isn't it? And like, you know, when that Wayne grows up, and it'll be like, oh, you know, I was born during, you know, this crazy time in history, and it'd been like, you know, people would have been still having kids during like the Second World War and all that, and like, you know, what a mad, I mean, it's a weird time in history. And I think nowadays, especially when you look at the environment and all that, people are going, oh, maybe I shouldn't have kids because of, you know, the global warming impact and all this sort of thing. But like, it's one of those things. It's like, you can't, you know, your life is going to go in the way it's going to go, and you know, there might be these global events happening, but you know, you've still got to have your, you know, live your life. And if you want kids, you have kids, and you do the best of it, because it's like, some people might be maybe scared to like bring a kid into the world now when it's so uncertain and all that. But it also probably can be quite liberating, and going, well, this gives me a reason to hope, you know, and to go, let's get out of this, let's have a, you know, build a better future for the next generation,
and fight for a better government, and fight for a better future for your kids and stuff like that. I know, I think obviously it must be so hard if you have kids right now, like obviously with all the kind of school stuff, but I do think like it is a lovely distraction. Like I remember the first lockdown, because I do like babysitting sometimes, and like I'd just be like, please send me like videos of like your cute children, because it's just like, you just needed that kind of to kind of forget about all the horrible things going on in the world.
Right now is a bit of a baby boom, because I think, you know, when we had lockdown 1 and people who were in relationships and coupled up were like, yay, let's just be drunk and spend all this time together. And then they've been like, okay, I spent the whole pandemic pregnant, and now the babies are coming. I know a lot of people that are about to have a baby or just had a baby.
Yeah, it's like is it December? Are you born in December if you conceive in February? Because obviously like Valentine's Day.
But yeah, no, my friend's birthday is mid-November, and she was conceived on Valentine's Day.
Mid-November.
9 months, November.
Yeah, so I'm terrible at maths, but it's that thing of like, just being like, oh well, we could just have sex now, and then you kind of see it coming, the months of everyone being like, oh, there's a lot of November babies.
Yeah.
Tell you one thing though, people are saying about they're coming up for their second birthday in lockdown and that. It must be weird to have your second pregnancy in lockdown if that's how long it was on for. Like someone got into bacon during the lockdown, that's for sure.
I was being very bitter a couple of weeks ago when I was just seeing all these engagements, and I was just like, oh, for God's sake, it's just because they're bored. They're all just bored. Might as well just add a little kind of like thing to look forward to.
That's so funny. So at the start of lockdown one, people who were maybe like had been in relationships and they were maybe on a break or had broken up were suddenly getting back together and moving back in together. Yeah. And I was like, don't get back together just because we're going into lockdown.
I know.
Well, it's like, I know, it's kind of stick or twist, isn't it? It's like, well, I could either just be alone for this indefinite period of time, or, like I can have someone there, you know what I mean? So it's.
But how much worse could it be, like, as in, I think you break up for a reason, and I'm someone who's broken up and then got back together with someone, and the problems are still there. And I think, like, obviously the lockdown is just making everything so intense. Like, I just think it's really, really playing with fire.
I think the worst thing would be to end up in that situation when you had got into, if you started going with somebody just because you didn't want to be alone, and then you ended up having a baby or something like that happened where and then you're kind of like, oh God, I've made this decision out of fear, and now it's going to be me for the rest of my life. I'm sure that's not the case for the submission we received. I'm sure they're going to be very happy and have a long, happy life together. I certainly hope that anyway. But it's a tough one, and I think that it does go back to that thing of, like you were saying, Rachel, it's like, to be honest, that's probably why you shouldn't jump into these things for the wrong reasons, because that it's one thing to be alone, but it'd be worse to kind of be attached to this person for the rest of your life that you might not necessarily want to be. Even if you split up, if you've got a kid, that person's going to be in your life forever. And I think it's sometimes tempting to just jump to these rash decisions, whether it be getting a relationship with somebody or just giving into your temptations and breaking the rules. I'm sure people, that's crossed people's minds and all the rest of it, but I think this time it's it takes a lot of kind of like, you just need to take a breather and be like, I'm just going to you need to look inside yourself a wee bit and be like, I'm going to ride this out and not make any rash decisions and no doing I maybe wouldn't do otherwise, and just try and stick it out and trust that things will be all right going forward.
Do you know what I've been thinking about baby-wise, and this is maybe my weird brain, is when you think back to people that you slept with and you think how bad it would have been if they were your baby daddy. Like, you just have a moment of being like, oh God, they would have been a terrible dad. And I was also thinking, because there was a guy that I slept with who is now in a relationship, and they announced that they're pregnant. And then all my friends were messaging me, like, just being like, did you see the news? So-and-so is like having a baby or whatever. And I was like, could have been me. And I was like, it couldn't have been me because we used protection. But I'm like, that could have been me 5 years ago.
I know, I've had that, but I've just felt it's been bullets dodged on my part, to be perfectly honest.
To be honest, I think I'm probably going to have to agree with the guy on this one, right? Nah.
I'm not saying I want that. I'm not saying it could have been me. I mean, like, it could have been me,
Yeah, like,
why wasn't it me? It should have been me. It's like, could have been a contender.
Not at all.
Yeah, maybe it's like a positive thing, going, oh my God, I could be pregnant with his baby. Thank God I'm single and just by myself. Chilling out today.
Well, also how hard it would be, like, with all the hospital stuff and COVID, and how terrifying all that must be, for people who are like getting pregnant. You're like, oh my God, stressful.
So I don't want to take up a hospital bed. That's another reason not to meet up with someone.
Yeah.
Stay home, kids, okay?
Yeah, I'm saving lives. Saving lives.
Save lives.
Stay home. Aye. Stay home, send nudes, save lives. We got any thoughts maybe going forward for the listeners on COVID? I would just say, like, it's not good. This isn't going to last forever. Fingers crossed, we'll boot it soon and things will hopefully be back to some form of normality. So stick with it. I would say, if you're struggling out there, it is a tough time for all of us. I think everybody's going through a similar situation and just stick with it.
I really do think that we're in the home straight. We've got the vaccine. You know, we do have the technology. Imagine how bad it would have been back in, I know I keep saying, but back in wartime, like how bad it would have been and how scary and all this kind of stuff. Like, I do think if we can just stay home, watch Netflix, maybe have the odd Zoom date with wine.
And don't be afraid to send those sex texts as well. You know,
No,
those things I've been
sexy
hearing
text.
so much about.
A better Scrabble go for us, Rachel.
I know, get a little cheeky Scrabble go on the go.
Yeah, just it's not forever, and you know, go on the dating app or listen to a podcast like this so that it's just that feeling of relating to someone in similar situations to you, and just really use this time to figure out what you want and what you're going to do when we get out of this, and start looking forward to getting out of it, and don't dwell on where we are now, because it's not forever.
Well
Absolutely.
said, definitely. And I feel like once this is all over, I want to come on the speed dating thing.
Yay!
I'll be like your first customer.
I know, it's so funny how many people that I've met through networking or whatever in the last year who are like, oh my God, I've always wanted to do it. I'm definitely coming. So ticket sales should hopefully be through the roof.
So I think that about covers it for dating during the pandemic. We'd like to thank our fantastic guest today, Jade Birkin, for joining us. Jade, where can people find you online?
So it's www.JadedDating.com, or you can follow me on Instagram, which is Jaded Dating Life.
Excellent, great stuff. We'll do check that out. And thanks very much for listening to this week's episode. As ever, we would ask, if you have enjoyed this, please do give us a 5-star review on iTunes, Apple Podcasts, or wherever it lets you leave a review. We are available on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts. And we also have a video version that's on YouTube.
And if you want to slide into our DMs, you can get us on Instagram at Debating Dating. Or if you have any questions, any topics you want us to cover, just want to have a little chat with us, then feel free to send us a wee email at the debatingdatingpod@gmail.com.
So thanks very much for listening, and we'll speak to you soon.